time for the Severe MMA Preview Show with Sean Sheehan, Spencer Kite, Harry Powell, and your host, Ian O'Neill.
That's right, everybody. It's Ian O'Neill again, and I'm joined by the fearsome foursome. Spencer Kite, Harry Powell, Sean Sheehan are all here to join, and they're going to talk to me about the UFC Fight Night card that's been headlined by Thiago, Santos, and Jamahal Hill in the light heavyweight division. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of this card, I want to remind everybody about our unreal, All Real sponsors. Head on over to eatallreal.com, enter the code word Severe MMA, get yourself some delicious natural protein bars, the cashew cookie nut, the peanut butter, the other coconut bars. There's loads of them over there, peanut butter, everything. You can get anything that you want over there, glasses, everything. Sean gets looked after. We're still waiting for the package over to Canada, myself and Spencer.
It's been sent tomorrow, literally. You're getting fucking nothing.
I better save this one. So head on over, eatallreal.com, code word Severe MMA, get yourself 15% off. Let's get into it. Thiago Santos, Jamahal Hill in the lightweight, heavyweight division are going to battle in the main event this Saturday night. A real interesting contest. Jamahal Hill is coming with force to the top of the 205-pound division. He will take on Thiago Santos, who is not on the best of runs right now, having only won, I think, one of his last four fights. He's a big fight for him on Saturday night as well, and he's kind of slid into the position of the gatekeeper to the top of the 205-pound division. Whether he likes that mantle or not, that's the one he's going to be given tonight, because, you know, he's been fighting the who's who of talent. Ankalaev was there, Johnny Walker the last time, before that, and then Alexander Rakic was the one before that. And yet again, he's faced with another top prospect in the 205-pound division in Jamahal Hill, who had one blip on the radar of his career so far when he was subbed by Paul Craig. But, you know, who doesn't get subbed by Paul Craig? A lot of the light heavyweight division has right now. So let's go over to the main man himself, Sean Sheehan, because I know that he's busting at the seams to talk about his boy, Jamahal Hill. How do you think are his chances coming in here, Sean? I know you spoke very highly of him, always up and through along his UFC career. This is a real good test against, you know, a former title challenger, a guy who's very durable, a guy who will always give you a good solid test, has power, can knock you out if you're not careful. How do you see Jamahal Hill coming into this fight facing off against Thiago Santos?
I mean, it's a great test. You use the word test there, and I think that's exactly what it is for a guy who's been tested well throughout his career. You know, he fought Clidson Abreu, went to a no contest, obviously, who's, you know, had a very good career and is doing good stuff in PFL. Beat Van Semprou, obviously had the setback against Paul Craig, and then fought Jimmy Crute and Johnny Walker. So he's been fighting top 15 guys, you know, basically for the last 2-ish years, for a guy who's 13 fights into his career or something. And that's, you know, that's very, very good. And that's a very high level way to be building yourself. And now he's fighting Thiago Santos, a guy a lot of people thought should have been the light heavyweight champion of the world. A lot of people thought he beat John Jones, and if he didn't, it was very, very close. Okay, he hasn't been maybe the same fighter since he has been since then, but I think his last couple of fights have shown people still show the respect for him because of that big power that he has carried throughout his career. Now, has he really carried that power up to 205, especially later in his career following the John Jones fight? Obviously not. You know, he's won one fight by decision and lost the rest of them. But I think it still has to be there to be respected. And Ankalaev respected it and won it. Johnny Walker respected it and lost. Rakic respected it and won as well. So it's interesting to see, like, the last 3 fights have been 3 unanimous decision fights in a row. 1 lost by Walker and 2 wins for Rakic and Ankalaev against Santos. And I'm interested to see what sort of fight Jamahal Hill fights here, because after the Paul Craig fight, I remember saying, like, I've talked about Hill being, you know, my pick to be a future champion, and I think sooner rather than later. And after the Craig fight, it was like, well, he'll never lose a fight like that again. And when I say that, it's a very weird way. Like, he'll never lose a fight in the fucking mount, basically, with an armbar. Okay, but like, most people won't lose a fight like that twice in their career unless maybe they meet, 2009 Ronda Rousey or whatever. Well, it wasn't that far back, but 2014 Ronda Rousey or whatever. But the point is here, how is he going to fight Thiago Santos is the key question to this whole main event. It really is, because if he goes out and fights him like the last three guys have, where it's basically going, right, I'm going to fight you to a decision, we'll see who'll win. I'm going to be careful, I'm not going to take your big shots. I'm not sure who'll win that fight, honestly. I'm really not sure who'll win that fight. If they fight in a fight where he leaves himself too open and he just goes wild, that's a fight he can both win and lose, right? Thiago Santos can land a big shot, knock him out without a shadow of a doubt. He can land a big shot, knock Thiago Santos out without a shadow of a doubt. What he needs here is a smart, intelligent, cocky performance. I use that word cocky. You need to be, you need to be confident. You need to be cocky in there to win big fights like this against good guys. Not stupid, but confident and smart. And if he doesn't have all of those things, it won't be a fight he'll win easily. He needs to go in there and fight well. And that might be an easy thing to say. It might sound like a stupid thing to say. But if he goes in there and tries to fight a long fight, if he goes in there and tries to fight 25 minutes, he's making that, I think, a closer fight than it needs to be at times. Look at Amanda Nunes last week. She went in there basically to fight a 25-minute fight, I think Jamahal Hill needs to open up a little bit, but in the areas he can open up, I'm sure Harry Powell will tell you about them in a second when Ian throws it over to him, where and what he should do to open up. But I don't think you stand there and you fight a technical matchup with Thiago Santos for the whole fight if you are Jamahal Hill with such quality in so many different areas. I think you open up in some areas, you take Thiago Santos out of there. I think this is going to be a close fight early. He'll work his way into it, and I think it'll either maybe go to a decision where he's winning well late, and it won't be your prototypical close unanimous decision. You know what I mean? It could be a late finish or something like that. But I think that's my key to this fight. And there's a lot of ways this fight can go. As I mentioned, I said he can win or lose that way. He can win or lose this way, but he'll definitely win this way. That's 5 different ways this fight can go, and I'm interested to see. I'm picking everyone here. I'm interested to see what way it goes. I think after the first roundish, we will know how it's going. But after the third round, I think that's when we're kind of going to get the whole picture of this fight. I'm very intrigued by it. Really, really am. And intrigued to see how he'll actually fight here against Santos.
All the predictions from Sean Sheen there. He knows how to cover his ass. That's why I'll give him that. And he'll come back and say that he was right after giving them all then. But fair play to him.
I was.
But, you talked about Hill's confidence coming into this. And from what I've seen so far, his interviews, his media work, what he's been saying about himself, that it's all confidence. And that's why he's calling him the best Dana White Contender Series contestant. He's joking around, having fun when he's getting his picture taken. He seems really settled, and he seems really looking forward to this challenge as well. And you said it quite well. I think for me, if you're to look back at Thiago Santos fights of the past, like you said, you cannot go in there and fight a kind of a tit for tat, nitpicky fight with a guy like Santos. And I would pinpoint Johnny Walker's performance against Santos, who gave him a little bit too much respect. Now, I agree with John in saying that you have to fight in spells, but giving too much respect is not a way to go with Thiago Santos, who, has the ability now to kind of make a fight closer than it needs to be from his own sense of the word. And I'll go to you, Spencer, about Thiago Santos, a guy who's had to probably adjust his game due to the injuries that he's had. A lot of explosive power that he had in the middleweight division when he moved up and he did his 2 knees against John Jones. That kind of explosiveness kind of went away a little bit, plus the move up in weight. Maybe your weight doesn't carry over all as much as well. For him, do you kind of see that adjustment in his game? And do you think we might see a fighter who's settling into that adjustment a little bit more as the fights go along?
I think he's a guy at this stage of his career that, while he could settle in to being a different version of himself, he could settle into being not the explosive powerhouse that he was when he first came into the division, and obviously that he was at middleweight. I honestly think he's one of those guys that is stuck thinking that the old version is just waiting in the next fight, and it's just a matter of time until he gets back to it. The other thing that you didn't mention in there in terms of the changes and the differences is he's gotten older. I believe he's 38 years old, 39 years old. Like, at a certain point, all that athleticism, all that explosiveness starts eroding and it starts wearing away. And then when you add in that he did, as you said, both his knees in the John Jones fight, so he had to have those repaired. He just isn't that guy anymore. And so to be stuck in your head that I'm just a fight away from being that guy and I can do it all in the gym and I still feel like the same guy, but it not being there in application is a very difficult thing. If he can ever get to a point where he says, all right, I'm not the explosive powerhouse, and kind of have a little bit of that Andrei Arlovsky shift, right? Where it's okay, well, I'm going to use the guile that I have. I'm going to use the experience that I have. People are still afraid of the power, so I can use that to my advantage. I can use this assortment of kicks. Then he can be successful again going forward. Maybe not challenge for a title, but even a better version of what he's been these last 4 or 5 fights. But that's a thing that you have to make that decision cognitively. You have to accept that change. And I don't know if he's ready to or capable of making that change. Because when you, for years on end, look at yourself and see somebody that is going to be a world champion or the best version of yourself every single time, accepting that you're anything but that is really difficult. I think we've seen that in his performances in these last few fights.
Yeah, I think Harry excellently described that before as a fighter going into his primitive state as a fighter, where you just fall back into what you've been doing throughout your career. Obviously, injuries come into the mix and stuff like that, where you have no choice but to change up your game somewhat. When you rely on explosive power as much as he did, and he doesn't have it anymore, it has to be a big adjustment in my eyes as well. And maybe I'll throw it over to you now, Harry, just maybe to break down the nooks and crannies of the fight itself. A couple of things I would like to point on is maybe the point on Thiago Santos and maybe a couple of the change-ups that he has had. And also something that Sean said as well, in how Hill will choose to fight in this fight, where he has to kind of take a few risks and ultimately that will bring the greatest reward.
So I think maybe this is controversial. If it is controversial, let me know. But I feel like if we look at the guys that Thiago Santos has lost to, those are guys who have made peace with who they are as fighters. The fighter that he recently beat in Johnny Walker was a fighter that was in transition. He's tried to move away from the mad bastard into the more technical point fighting, less athleticism, less, explosion, less, just being a mad bastard, right? I think the question I have for Jamahal Hill is, have you decided who you are yet? And this speaks to what Shawnee said about the game plan and the application. If Jamahal Hill has decided and been at peace with who he is as a fighter, he can apply those sets of skills to any of the 57 game plans that Sean's just concocted for him, right? Now, how does he beat Thiago Santos? I think the answer is quite simple. Youth, speed, and hunger kills. So what you do with the Thiago Santos, who, yes, believes that people are fearful of his power, but is also a little gun-shy himself, you take shots at the legs and you test where he is from a footwork perspective. You test where he is from a speed perspective. And then you do what Jamahal Hill does really well, using range, using speed, and landing straight shots. Straight shots will almost always beat hooks. And Jamahal Hill has the youth and the speed to be able to get in and out of the pocket quicker than Thiago Santos can find him in the pocket. Now, is that a dangerous game plan? Sure, because as Shawnee said, if he gets lazy, Thiago Santos can land one of the hammers. He'll rip it out of his chest and fucking clobber you with it. And then we've got big problems, right? But does he? Does he? When he's got clipped just a few times, and he's been pushed back a little bit. And the footwork isn't quite there. And when he is pushed back and the weight is on his back leg, he gets his front leg chewed up a little bit. What do we see? Because Spencer mentioned it. And I think I'm not to divert away from this fight too much, but this is one of the interesting wrinkles about Tom Aspinall. When Tom Aspinall comes back, is the same air of invincibility there? And the second thing I question about Thiago Santos is you reached the precipice of your division. You reached the precipice, and that was John Jones. You put absolutely every ounce of your soul into that fight. You left with less of your soul than you walked into, right? You left 2 knees in that. You left some brain cells, and you left a ton of physical and mental energy. Who are you after that? Who actually are you? So for Thiago Santos to win this fight, I have questions about who he is. Has he done the things that Spencer has mentioned? Is he able to find Jamahal Hill and catch him as he's coming in? Is he able to move his feet in a method that he can win the outside foot battle and catch the angles and force Jamahal Hill to square up? Is he able to maybe offer, and I'm not expecting big grappling, but a bit of clinch grappling, maybe a trip, maybe some dirty boxing, just a bit of variety to catch Jamahal Hill and make him guess, slow him down a little bit, use the guile that we've mentioned, be a little bit of the odd Andrei Arlovski. Does he do that? I don't think so. I feel like this is a matchup where Jamahal Hill is looking at Thiago Santos as a guy to build the name, take the rank, and move on.
Yeah, and that's exactly as I see it myself. I think with this fight, I think the outcome of it is going to be based solely off Jamahal Hill and what he does here. Because, kind of piggyback off what Sean said, coming in there with that confidence, coming in there with that, with that attitude that he is the best. I think if he goes in there and he simply just doesn't show Thiago Santos any respect, gets in the pocket and clips him, he can put him out of there. But there's so many things that can happen in a fight. I mean, if Santos gets off a good shot early, it's going to have Jamahal Hill thinking a little bit, should I be getting into the danger zones a little bit? So that's why I'm curious to see what the first opening 5 minutes of this fight is going to be like. We might not see too much action in the first 5 minutes. I expect this fight to kick into action in the second round. And then we'll see how this fight is truly going to go down. Before we move off this one, Spencer, if Jamahal Hill does what I said he was going to do there, comes in, shows no respects, clips Santos, gets him out of there, knockout, gets on the mic, does his promo, how quickly do we see him propelled into not a title fight, but what would you say the path is for him after this fight?
I mean, I think it's the next fight. I think if he goes out there and does to Thiago Santos what guys haven't done lately, most importantly, Magomed Ankalaev didn't do to Thiago Santos. He goes out and cuts in line. So coming off last week, we think Ankalaev gets his 9th straight win. It's a finish of Anthony Smith, injury notwithstanding. And you think, okay, well, the obvious matchup is Jan Blachowicz. That's the fight that's right there. If Jamahal Hill goes out on Saturday and smashes through Thiago Santos and says, as he said throughout his journey in the UFC, I've been telling you all that I'm going to be a champion. You need to start paying attention. People are going to pay attention and say, okay, put him in there with the former champion. Because it's a more impressive, I mean, part of it is just recency. It'll be 1 week more fresh than Ankalaev, but it's also more style points. It's also a guy that gets on the mic and will say, give me Blachowicz, or will just say, give me Ankalaev. I'll beat that dude. And so it puts him right there. A big win on Saturday puts him a step, maybe 2 steps max away from fighting for the title.
Absolutely.
Sean going crazy about it.
I feel like, so sorry to cut across, I feel like this could be one of those ones as well. And if he knocks him out right, let's say in the first 2 minutes, it'll be massive, it'll be big and everything like that. But I feel there might be actually something better than, let's say if he dominated for the first 2 rounds, beat him up, and then finished him. That would somehow be even more impressive. And that's the way I feel like the fight is going to do.
Stamp the win, wouldn't it? Yeah.
It would also, like, Thiago Santos is a guy who has gone 5 rounds so many times recently because he is so tough as well in a lot of different ways. And if Hill can kind of break him and beat him and finish him, that could be massive. One thing as well, I think Harry said there as well, I wonder how much has of Santos's last 3 fights all going to the decision. I wonder how much of that is a function of lads taking it easier against him and fighting in a 5-round fight, and how much of that is a function of him maybe not having that power again. Like, look at Amanda Nunes the last day. She both fought a 5-round fight, but she also had the countering power that if she didn't do that, she could have knocked her out. Can Thiago Santos just turn that on? Say, right, I'm going to counter this fucker. I'm going to hit him with big, hard shots, and I'm going to try to knock him out. Like, I don't know if he still has the ability to do that or not. And if he switches that on, right, and if he tries to fight that way, that could be a tough night. I'm Jamahal Hill's biggest fan. That could be a very fucking tough night for Hill, because Hill will have to hit him. Like, if Hill hits him with his 3 hardest shots and Santos hits Hill with his 3 hardest shots, I think Santos is probably coming out the better of that, you know? So it'll be very interesting if he can let his fucking hands go. But Jack Slack said it on Twitter there just before we came on. It was like, you know, watching post John Jones, Thiago Santos is one of the hardest things to do, and it is true. He just doesn't seem like he's the same fighter. But I'm not 100% sure on that either, to be honest. No, I'm probably looking back. I know, being a Man United fan, I'm always looking in the fun past. But maybe we're not looking at the past enough. You never know.
Yeah, no one, like, to go off what you said and the way people have been fighting them. Maybe no one has brought the dog out in Thiago Santos yet. Do you know what I mean? We might, and it'd be interesting to see if Jamahal Hill can do it. I don't know. Like, I think his chin is a little bit testy now, but it'll be interesting to find out.
Dog there. I don't know that there's a dog there anymore.
Yeah, it could be more of a Labradoodle now, maybe, or something like that.
Schnauzer.
It's a dog, but what it is it's a pit bull that has now been domesticated and is just a cuddly, like, he's got a baby. He's got a lovely relationship with his wife.
Does he have a baby, Ian?
He's just, they're just settled in, right? And he's a little older. He's, as Harry said, you get to that point where you maybe should have been the champion, and then you're not, and your knees are fucked after it.
What are you fighting for?
What?
That's it.
How do you get up for fighting Alexander Rakic, who is looking at you as the most important thing he's ever done?
Yeah.
This is why I think that this fight is, the questions we have in this fight aren't even necessarily technical, because we know who Thiago Santos is. I don't think we know who Jamahal Hill is. I think it's too early in his career to truly know what the ceiling is, to truly know who he's going to be. If Thiago Santos can push Jamahal Hill back, whether that's with straight shots, whether that is with a bit of that pressure, whether he's able to cut the cage off better. I mentioned the outside footwork battle. If Thiago Santos is able to win that battle, we're going to see who Jamahal Hill can be on the back foot.
But Santos not even going to try to do that, though, is he?
Well, I don't think so, but, you know, we have to ask the questions. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel as though what's going to happen is the moment that Santos steps in, he's going to find out that Jamahal Hill is faster in the counter. And when he finds he's faster in the counter, he's going to go into a defensive shell, and it's going to be about whether Jamahal Hill can find enough variety to actually get through. And if he can get through, I think he's going to beat the fuck out of him. But
I think that's it. I think you just summed it up. You summed it up absolutely perfectly there. And I think we can't really say too much more on that. I was going to try and start an argument over who's better, Ankalaev or Hill, but I think I'll leave that for another day. We're going to find...
Craig is the answer to that question.
Exactly. I think we'll find out that for real eventually anyway, one way or another in the light heavyweight division. But we shall move on to the co-main event, and that's in the welterweight division. That's Vicente Luque versus Geoff Neal. You know, my former favorite fighter to watch ever, Vicente Luque, went out there and after I talked him up and performed horrifically bad against Bilal Muhammad. And, you know, he has a chance to go in there with a kind of a better suited matchup for him this time when he goes in and he takes on Geoff Neal. You know, this fight is likely going to be a stand-up battle, but Luque always has that submission game in his back pocket, and I'm wondering how much Geoff Neal will be thinking about that submission game and how much it will take out of his actual game altogether. Spencer, talk to me about the story of this fight coming into it. How do you feel both fighters are shaping up here? You know, Vicente Luque was obviously very disappointed with his last performance, could have propelled himself into a title contention fight, number one contender fight, maybe even with an impressive win over Muhammad, he could have got that title shot after Leon Edwards as well. He has to fight his way back to the top again.
Yeah, I think it's a really important fight for both guys. I mean, as you said, Vicente Luque coming off the loss, which is sort of, to me, for now, set a high point for him, right? It's sort of made it clear that this is the level he's going to get to and maybe not beyond. He had that with the Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fight. He's now had that with the Bilal Muhammad fight. If he wants to get beyond that, it's going to take 3 or 4 more wins. And it's going to have to start with a guy in Geoff Neal, who's kind of looking to prove the same thing, just a few rungs further down the ladder, right? He's had a few good matchups, but then he's himself run into Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. These things happen in MMA. Best welterweight in the world, right, Sean?
Facts.
And then he ran into Neil Magny, and that didn't go very well. But then he rebounded with a win over Santiago Ponzinibbio, which was a good win. I still think Geoff Neal is a guy that has some of that forward potential. I think this is a good matchup for him because there can be sort of a chance for him to get off some of that offense. I don't think Luque is necessarily that guy that you think of as a submission specialist in the traditional sense. He's not a guy that you're thinking of that he's coming out and he's looking to wrestle and he's looking to grapple. He's just super opportunistic and great when it's there. He more wants to go out and sling with you. And so this is an interesting one. I think Luque is the better of the two. I think he's the more durable and the more varied of the two. But if Geoff Neal's ever going to take that next step and ever going to kind of advance further, this is where it starts.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I would have to agree. And Vicente Luque, for me, is the more well-rounded fighter. What he does, he tries to pressure fighters on the feet, forcing them to shoot, and he'll darce you. And he has done that to a lot of fighters as well in the past. It'll be interesting to see if he can do it against Geoff Neal, Harry. What do you expect to see when these two go to battle there in the co-main event?
The most important thing here is footwork. It's the most important thing in this fight by a country mile. Vicente Luque stands really, really tall, really high. Why? Because of what you boys have just said. He's like, shoot on me. I fucking dare you. Because these arms are waiting. The down block turns into front headlock, turns into darce quicker than you can believe. Ask Michael Chiesa. Ask Tyron Woodley. It's not fun down there. It's not fun down there. I think one of the strengths of Vicente Luque's game and how it's going to match up with Geoff Neal is going to be really interesting is Geoff Neal is a guy that likes to reset into space. He likes to bound out of the pocket, take a good sort of 2-3 feet out of the pocket, reset his feet, maybe switch a stance, maybe throw a feint, and then come back in or draw the person in. Vicente Luque doesn't really give a fuck about any of that noise. He doesn't really care about any of that super traditional, fundamental striking basics of creating your space and setting up traps. His traps are right in front of you. He likes to stand. He likes to cut the cage off. He likes to plod forward, and he's going to find you in the pocket. The right hand is a bomb. The left hand is a bomb. We know where he is. Something I like about the way that Vicente Luque uses his footwork and uses his pressure fighting is that when he's outside of range and when you're not behind the tram line of the outer ring of the cage, he'll just give you 25% shots. A little teep here, a body kick, a low kick, maybe a jab, maybe a something, maybe a bit of a head movement. But he does everything just to show you this is available and I know it's available. And as soon as I can get you behind that tram line, I'm going to start to go to work. The question for me in this fight is, can Geoff Neal either push Luque back? I think that's very unlikely. Or can Geoff Neal use the superior footwork that he seems to have and the angle creation that he seems to have to cut the angles and draw Luque into that space? What did Wonderboy do? He was on the back foot and he just kicked him in the head 1,000,000 times. What did he do? He took him onto shots, brought him onto shots, because Luque is going to be willing to walk forward. He's going to be willing to trade to land. I don't think grappling, in terms of the traditional way that Luque's found chokes, is going to be super prominent. Neal is a guy that is an opportunistic grappler. We saw against Neil Magny that he overshot some of his striking entries, ends up sort of in half a body lock, and he's like, fuck it, I guess I might as well use this. And Magny's like, that's cool, bro. Watch some takedown defense. But we also see from Geoff Neal that his takedown defense isn't bad either. He'd stuffed some really nice takedowns against Bilal Muhammad, had some nice get-ups against Bilal Muhammad. I just feel like the footwork is the most important thing here. I also think, and I'm going to open this up to the rest of you guys, the strength of schedule, I think, is questionable here. Vicente Luque is losing to the upper echelon of that division. Geoff Neal is losing to Neil Magny and Wonderboy near the end of his career, right? Like,
yeah, that was the question. That was the question actually I was going to actually throw to Sean myself, is because what Vicente Luque has done throughout his career is, you know, he has lost against those upper echelon guys. He has gone on a run then. He's built himself back up, and he's failed at the final hurdle more than one occasion now. So what do you feel that that's down to, Sean? Is it we talk about fighters in the past being able to change stuff up when fighting elite level competition in fights? Do you think that it is with Vicente Luque that he fights to the beat of his own drum, and when things aren't going his way, he doesn't really know how to make those adjustments to get over the finish line?
Not necessarily. I think Spencer said it right when he said it, and it's funny. I said the exact same thing in my on my betting show, that like he has found his level, I think, and you know, if you look at his last 3 losses, it's Bilal Muhammad, Wonderboy, and Leon Edwards. It was Leon Edwards in 2017. Let's not forget that. It's not Leon Edwards 5 years later, you know. So it wasn't exactly like he climbed the mountain. He got beaten by, you know, an up and comer in Leon Edwards there, basically. Then he fought a load of nobodies basically for the next few years, got destroyed by Wonderboy, and then went on a good run. You know, okay, he beat the Ghost of Tyron Woodley, but the Chiesa win was a great win. You know, Peter Price and Randy Bound, good wins. And then ended up, you know, losing to Bilal Muhammad, who he had beaten, you know, a few years previous. I think, as Spencer said it again, I will copy exactly what he said. They've both, I think, reached their level. Like, Geoff Neal is basically a little version of Neil Magny, if we're being honest. Like, he's never going to climb over someone like Neil Magny, I don't think. You know, the lads are saying that maybe they think he's a couple of steps more to rise. I maybe a couple, you know, maybe from what 13 to 11, but I don't think so. I don't think Luque will rise any further either, to be honest. I think Luque has actually gotten kind of everything out of his career that he will get out of it. Like, Vicente Luque is the exact opposite of Thiago Santos. Santos spends his whole fight hiding his best weapons, and Vicente Luque opens his fucking Christmas presents before he's gotten down the stairs, you know? That's the type of fighter Vicente Luque is, and you gotta love it. And when you are a fighter like that, and you know, I slightly shat on his record there, and I didn't mean to do it, but I think someone like that should be applauded for doing that, because you can never he'll never look back in his career, I don't think, and say, I have regrets in terms of the way I fought. You know, if you look at, say, MVP versus Logan Storley, could he have regrets in the way he fought in that fight, that he let that fight be close? Even I think he will. There are certain fighters will look back in their careers and think, I fucking left that one behind me. I don't think Vicente Luque will be like that. As you said, the guys he's gotten beaten by, he's only lost 2 fights to Bilal and Wonderboy in the last 5 years, both being incomprehensively just way better fighters than him on that specific night. So I think he's reached that. But I'll say it again. I think his level is a higher level than Geoff Neal. There are some fighters, you pressure him and you throw everything out there like Luque has. Let's say it's a Wonderboy, and that's what he wants. He'll eat that up for dinner. You know, absolutely loves it. But there's other lads, you throw that out there at him, and they will wilt, and they will hate that. And I don't think necessarily Geoff Neal is one like that. I don't think he's necessarily going to wilt or give up or anything like that. But I don't think it'll work out well for him. I think Luque will win that fight. I think that pressure and all those shots will work for him. And, you know, if, as the lads have alluded to, if Neal does shoot in or if he does panic a little bit, well, what he's going to be met by is not very nice on the ground for him.
Because there's a real opening here, Harry, for a finish for Luque here. You can see a finish, whether it's by knockout, whether it's by submission. It's hard to see a win for Geoff Neal unless, you know, he makes it a super close fight somehow and maybe gets a decision. I'd be very surprised if he got Vicente Luque out there, but
So
I'm
obviously Luque has never been finished to strikes, right? Never been knocked out. So I agree. I think it's tough. It's going to be tough to get him out of there with a one bang. Now, we should preface this, as we always do, with when you've been in as many wars as Luque has, that chin has to go at some point, right? That's an important point to make, and we should make it. So is it going to be this fight? Personally, I don't think so. But of course it could be. We never know when that chin's going to disappear. And when it does, it's gone, and it's gone forever. I feel like the smartest game plan is to just, Shawnee made, a beautiful analogy, and that seems to be a theme of this show, is we all go away and we spend a week thinking of analogies that we could say to try and better each other, and these things happen in MMA. But if Geoff Neal is able to get on his bike, fight going backwards, cutting his angles, and landing his 1-2s, I think he has a better feint game than Vicente Luque, because Vicente Luque doesn't feint. He just throws shit at you. I think he has a better footwork game. I think he has a better angle game. I think he has a better head movement game. The question is can he do that for 15 minutes without finding himself in clinch exchanges, finding himself in pocket exchanges that he doesn't want to be in? And if the answer is yes, he will win the fight and he'll make it look similar to how the Wonderboy fight looked. If the answer is no, he's probably going to get fucked up.
It'll be interesting to find out. Fun fact too, Vicente Luque holds a win over one of the guys in the main event as well, in Thiago Santos, early in his career. So
War Luque, legend.
Just said I'd throw that in there for no reason. Useless fact of the day, hashtag. You can hashtag that shit, Johnny.
I'm loving that one.
Yeah, go for it. Okay, Spencer, I'm going to go over to you just to break down the heavyweight and the flyweight. We're talking about the big guys and the little guys, and you covered the tough season from both ends. Give us a breakdown first of Zach Peja versus Muhammad Usman. Usman is the brother of Kamaru Usman, obviously, in the welterweight champion. So, I'm looking forward to hearing how tough went for them.
He is indeed he's the little brother of Kamaru Usman, even though he's a gigantic human being. Played collegiate football. Zach Pauga is actually the more upside prospect here. He traditionally fights at light heavyweight. He's one of those guys that looked at the Ultimate Fighter as, you can go in, I don't have to cut weight. I understand that I'm going to have to fight a few times to get through into the finale. So if I'm not cutting weight, great. He too was a former NFL player with the Houston Texans. Trains with Elevation Fight Team. Comes from a great camp. Has a win over Marcus Perez, who fought in the UFC for a little bit, was an LFA champ in his last appearance. He, to me, going in, was the number one heavyweight, and that has proven out, that is sort of borne out in the process. He had a good win in the semifinals over one of his teammates, Jordan Heiderman, who we saw cornering Anthony Smith last week. Mo Usman it's weird because he feels to me like a guy that every time I see him, I'm like, he's just right there to maybe break out, and you want him to be even a 60% version of his brother, but he's kind of just a ploddy big heavyweight. And so I think Zach Pauga is probably the winner of this one, and the much more interesting prospect going forward. But it's also heavyweights, right? And so you get a bunch of weeks to prepare. Muhammad Usman is, as I said, the physically bigger man. I don't think Pauga is necessarily coming in at, close to his light heavyweight weight, but he's also not putting on a whole ton, because I don't think heavyweight is a full-time move for him. So it's going to be interesting to see what they look like on Friday. But I think on Saturday we see Zach Pauga go out and have success and get the victory and join the fraternity of Ultimate Fighter winners.
And the plan would be for him then, I imagine, that's a natural 205er, which just slot into the 205 division, yeah?
I would think so. It makes the most sense. As I said, he's 5-0 in his career. He got a late start, obviously, from trying professional football, and I believe he played rugby for a while as well. And so 5-0 in his pro career, went 5-0 in his amateur career. It feels like the right division for him. The thing that's bode well for him in the season is that traditionally being smaller. So he's had a speed advantage. He's had a quickness advantage, a movement advantage, all of those things. Plus he trains with a great camp, has always worked with big bodies and Overeem and Curtis Blades and a bunch of very good people. And so I think he goes back down, and I think he can be sort of one of those guys that over the next couple of years has some success at 205, breaks into that lower third of the rankings potentially, and we actually see something from him going forward.
Indeed, Sean, your thoughts, please. Only joking, only joking.
I'm looking through Muhammad Usman's record there, and he lost to Dante Mays, who was the lad you might remember from last week being absolutely shite. So I wouldn't say he's great now. No. I was looking.
Sorry,
Aaron Blanchfield and Perla Gonzalez both beat what's her name, Brogan Walker. So she has faced some good competition, lost to both of them, but there's nothing outstanding about any of their records there, to be honest. So
yeah, Juliana Miller Spencer, only 3 fights deep into her professional career, finds herself in the tough final in the women's flyweight division. How do you see that fight going down between Brogan Walker and Juliana Miller?
I'm really interested in Juju Miller. She, as you said, only 3 fights. She went into the house. First fight was against the woman that she lost to, Claire Guthrie. She avenges that defeat in the house. She's kind of just a scrappy. She's got some good jiu-jitsu. She's just tough. You know, watching the show, she's a little bit awkward. She's a little bit weird. She's like kind of motivational, but also kind of street and hood and ghetto. And like, she's a little weird, but she might be a good fighter. She's still at a point that she's super young and super inexperienced. But the things we've seen from her, like she went out in the semifinals and did exactly what you're supposed to do when you have a huge advantage. She took Caitlin Neal to the ground, worked her over in the first round, came out in the second and was like, cool, that worked really well in the first. So let me do it again. And then got an arm trap and got the tap. I think she's someone that I'm very interested to see 3, 4, 5 fights from now, just to see where it pans out, what becomes of it. Brogan Walker is clearly the more established commodity, as Sean said. She fought and lost to Pearl Gonzalez and Erin Blanchfield in Invictus. She beat Miranda Maverick in Invictus, so she has some experience. She dealt with a knee injury in the house. She kind of got through as best as she needed to. Be interesting to see full health, whether that experience edge really plays an advantage on Saturday. But as I said, Juliana Miller is somebody that, to me, as someone that thinks about these things and looks at these things for 3, 4, 5 years down the road, I'm going to keep an eye on because I think there is some potential there.
Yeah, and that's it. The women's flyweight division in the UFC is looking for some fresh talent as well. So it'll be exciting to see how these two women integrate into that division. Harry, I'm going to talk to you about Augusta Sakai versus Sergey Spivak. Sakai not having the best run of luck lately, coming back off 3 defeats in a row now. He really needs to get a win in this fight. Sergey Spivak coming back from beating the shit out of Greg Hardy, which was great to see in his last fight as well. How do you see this fight kind of playing out? Two pretty well matched guys here, given 2 records aren't really as an equal right now.
I mean, it'll play out, I guess. Look, Augusto Sakai is a guy that he's a generalist in not being great. He doesn't seem to have a vast specialty. He's tough. He's a heavyweight, but he gets finished. Sergey Spivak, I think, is the guy that seems to have the upside here. He seems to have improved his wrestling, changed teams a little while ago. You run up against Tom Aspinall and these things just happen. You know, like Tom Aspinall was quicker, stronger, more intelligent, picked his shots better and just put him away. We now know, we would have known the level of Tom Aspinall had the Blades fight handed out, but I don't think you're going to see Sergey Spivak climb up the ranks and be in a number 1 contendership against Curtis Blades anytime in his career. However, Spivak has, as we've seen against Greg Hardy, lots of really nice grappling, lots of mat returns, lots of submission chains. And if he gets to the head and arm choke, he finishes it really, really, really well, slides that shoulder under the jaw really nicely, turns the clock and applies the pressure. He's a big heavyweight man. I wouldn't want him cranking my jaw either. So I think this is a fight to see where Spivak is. I think Sakai is a guy that's been hanging around this heavyweight division for a long old time. And now he's going to be used as a guy for somebody like Sergey Spivak, maybe somebody like Pavlovich, maybe somebody like, the next kind of guys to chuck in and just find out. right? Can he go out and blow him out there in a round? Probably is the answer. If not, maybe the second round.
I would say, Sakai came up against Overeem, Rosenstruck, and Tai Tuivasa, who's in form in his last 3 fights. Definitely think that that's a good step up in competition for him. Like, he came in through the Contender Series and was undefeated until he met those 3 guys. I think you're definitely right, and it's a test for Spivak, who's only a baby in the heavyweight division at 27 years of age.
Yeah.
So Sakai, it's a good test to see, was it just too much too soon for Sakai, or will Spivak be able to beat that level of opponent? I know I'm interested to see it.
I feel like, for me, how it felt to me is the Overeem fight was like, we need Overeem to get a win, right? And it was over in Singapore, if I remember rightly. So it was like, go and do that thing. It was the same with Rosenstruck. Rosenstruck needed a win, so they chucked him in against him. And then for Tai Tuivasa, I think that was let's see where Tai Tuivasa is too. That may well have been for Augusto Sakai, here's a striker. He's going to happily strike with you. If you can clip him, you'll probably put him away. But it felt to me contextually in the moment of those fights being handed, and maybe Spencer or Sean can argue, but it felt as though those were fights that were given to Overeem and Rosenstruck as fights to get them back on track.
100%. Went 5 rounds with Overeem before getting clipped as well. So, I mean,
I feel like the Overeem fight was the test for him, right?
Yeah.
Was the, let's see if you can clear this hurdle. Let's see if this is real, right? Because it was 4 straight wins in the UFC before that against reasonable but not super established contendery kind of guys. And Overeem was, let's see if this is real. You go up and beat Alistair Overeem, then we got to start talking about you with some of these other names. Loses that one. Rosenstrike, as Harry said, was sort of a let's see who's going to get back on track. Which of these two gets moving in the right direction? And then Tai Tuivasa was very much a let's see if this little return of form for Tai Tuivasa is real or not. Because it's one thing to come back, and I think he beat Greg Hardy before that. And so that's one thing. But can you beat a top 15 guy? And he went out and clearly beat a top 15 guy and is now a top 5 guy, top 6 guy himself. So I think Sakai is that gatekeeper, test the younger bodies, exactly what he's doing here. And unfortunately, it just really hasn't got his way lately.
Yeah, it's kind of like Harry is right in what he's saying. It's kind of like he'd been used as a crash test dummy against all these guys. Against Alistair Overeem, Rosenstruck, Tuivasa, and now Spivak coming in as the young heavyweight. Are we going to see these 2 lads, Sean, slinging shots, breathing heavy in round 3? Are you expecting to see an early knockout? Are you expecting to see a submission, or do you give a shit at all?
I hope it's an early knockout. I'm just looking at it here, and I'm just thinking that heap of shit, 2 tough fights, and I believe this is a 3 a.m. main card. I may kill myself, lads. I'm not even joking. Oh my God, why would they do this?
This is last preview show for Sean.
6 fight main card as well. Just torture, like torture as shit. Put them tough fights opening up the card. Let's be real. These are, put them on the Dana White Contender Series. Nobody wants to see this shit. Nobody wants to see this on a card like this. If they grow and if they turn into good fighters, like Jamahal Hill or Sean O'Malley or whatever, we'll see them turn into that. We don't need them on a main card right now. We've enough fighters there. It's, oh my God. Yeah, I've just got into deep depression here in the last couple of minutes looking at these. But anyway, yeah, no one gives a shit about Sakai against Spivak. Let's be honest here. It's 2 middling heavyweights who will always probably be middling heavyweights. And there's so many of those. Like, the problem at heavyweight, right? So, let's say you look at someone like a Geoff Neal, and if he turns things around and he does a lot of things and becomes like way better of a fighter, he could rise. Like, look at Vicente Luque. He rose a lot over the last few years, and it's probably within 1 fight maybe of a title shot against Belal Muhammad. Let's say if he'd met someone different to Belal Muhammad there, he could have. That's never going to happen at heavyweight because those lads don't have the athletic force behind them to get over someone like a Francis Ngannou or a Cyril Gane or a Stipe Miocic. It's never going to happen for those guys. It's not possible, I don't think, from 2022 on, for someone who's not athletically gifted like all those lads I just named to get there. Like, it's John Jones, it's Brock Lesnar type of athletes that are going to, not Brock Lesnar specifically, but type of athletes like him. And that's actually, it's kind of, It's not sad, it's a reality of it, but it makes these middling heavyweight fights just even less and less of value to anyone, and that's the problem
At
as
least
well.
they didn't put it as the main event.
No, but that's the problem. When they got rid of Overeem, when they got rid of JDS, they kind of took away that hope in the middle of that as well from those lads, climbing again, and they weren't going to. But it also took away, like, if you beat an Overeem or a JDS, even at this stage of his career, at least you must have something in you to get past them. If you get past Sakai or Spivak, you might be a good fighter, but it doesn't actually say, like we were talking about someone earlier on, if you get past them, you're a good fighter. That's not the case with these lads. So it's, not to shit all over them or anything, but that's just reality.
Too late for that.
So I'm going to be the devil's advocate here and say, did beating Junior Dos Santos at the end of things there when he was, the last few fights in the UFC, did it really carry that? Like, did you honestly think watching somebody beat the shell of Junior Dos Santos and like a guy that we all loved, but wasn't anywhere near the same fighter, did that really make you believe in Fighter X that beat him? Or was it just that we
Not
care about that name and so we pretend that it's a big deal still?
Not necessarily, but Sakai and Spivak never will be and never have been a big deal. That's the difference, I think. Like, to have a yardstick, and I'm not even saying, like, maybe their yardstick at the moment, I know where they're ranked, maybe 11 or 12 or whatever. Like, JDS at his worst was probably a yardstick of number 15 maybe in that division. But at least that's like a known yardstick against someone who used to be good. Like, what good are these lads? Like, really, what good are they? I don't know. And that's a heavyweight only problem. I probably wouldn't be saying this about any other division, because, like, there's good guys, like, if you're a halfway last Sunsa, wherever it might be, 135, all the divisions apart from heavyweight, or maybe, obviously women's 145 doesn't even have a number one. So, but yeah, I think it's a unique problem in heavyweight, mostly based on athleticism. Maybe this is actually a better topic for a speaker's corner down the line, I suppose. But
like, I could definitely understand your assessment on Sakai. I think maybe a little harsh on Spivak at only 27 years of age. He has some time, but I've not seen, I have to agree, I've not seen anything like, you see something special in some of these up and coming guys. I haven't seen anything that set
submitted
my
Tai
world on fire.
Tuivasa a couple of years ago. Like, are we sure we want to just be done to this guy and call him trash?
Sure,
like, he may not.
I forgot who he was, but I'm
but
sure.
Can he be the sixth best heavyweight in the UFC?
If he fights for another 10 years, which he very well could, up until 37 as a heavyweight, and remains in the UFC, you never know what might happen there. You never know what a turn of a corner Spivak. I think Augusto Sakai is probably not going to be that guy, to be honest. I agree with you there, but I wouldn't be throwing out Sergey Spivak's chances of.
Could you ever imagine a world where Spivak beats either Gagne or Ngannou?
The two of them could be retired in 10 years.
No, but I also
they're young too.
I also don't need to look at everybody and say they're going to beat the absolute apex people in this division. Like, there's value to him being the 7th or 8th best heavyweight in the UFC. No, and I understand what you're saying. Like, I don't want to see him as a main eventer.
I think there's less value to that when they're never going to be higher. Like, say someone like a Luque, right? Let's say he's ranked number 7. There is a possible thought that Luque could climb higher. So for Bilal Muhammad to beat Luque was a great win. I don't think the same as the case is the same for the heavyweights. I just don't think it is. And it's like that might be unfair. It might actually, well, look, it's not unfair because it's the quality of division, if we're being honest. But like, we were actually talking before the podcast, and this is probably another thing for Speaker's Corner, but like the quality of divisions and like the sporting aspect versus the entertainment aspect is a reality of MMA that we can't ignore. It's not, if we go in there and talk about just the sporting aspect all the time, that's actually grand, but it's not the reality of it. The MMA is a sport, but it's also an entertainment, product. When there's a pay-per-view on, they're literally trying to sell as many pay-per-views as they can to get more money in. It's not the same if you watch a game of soccer or a game of, NFL or whatever it is. They go out there and they play the game and they go home, they get paid the same. It makes no difference. You have to sing for your supper in mixed martial arts. And when we're looking at the rankings, when we're looking at guys, when we're assessing guys, to just assess their ability and not assess their name and why people care about them and who they are in the division, I think is leaving kind of half it out as well. And you do that better than anyone, Spencer, I must say. So fair play.
So the one thing I would say, and Harry and I were on a stream last weekend watching the fights, and we talked about Alex Morono, who feels like a guy to me that has 100% accepted the fact that he is not going to be a UFC welterweight champion. Like, that's just not in the cards. But I tell you that I want to see Alex Morono fight every time he fights, because he goes out there and it's entertaining, and he's a good measuring stick, and he's a proper professional competitor. And so I know that I'm an outlier amongst outliers in this world, where I want to see just about everybody all the time. But like Drew Dober, for instance, right? He cracked the top 15 last year, good. And then he ran into Islam Makhachev. These things happen, and Brad Riddell. So that's the hurdle that he can't clear as of right now. Drew Dober is 31.
Great fighter. 34, though. He's not going to be champion.
Yeah, is he suddenly going to start turning it on and go forward? No.
Maybe.
But
Spivak
do you want to watch
chance.
it? Maybe.
No way.
Yeah. Are you saying
Spivak has a better chance than Drew Dober?
Are you really saying that Drew Dober at 34 has a chance to win the lightweight title?
Probably not, but Spivak definitely doesn't. Like, I think Drew Dober has like a great ability. I think he's a very, very, very good fighter. Like, maybe it is a bit too late for him, fair enough. But we're also in a state in MMA, and myself and Harry actually talked a bit about this on the Speaker's Corner last week, where and we talked about experience. Sometimes you get that fucking experience and you're just too old. Like, look at Rory McDonald now. He's all the experience, he's all the ability, and now he's just falling away. He's like a fucking old man, a bag of bones. Like, he just can't do that anymore. Right. Like, that's another reality of MMA, but yeah. Come on, attack me more. Come on.
I like where this is going. The man who's been most quiet during this interaction is the man down in the bottom right.
His two best friends are arguing with each other here. He doesn't like it.
I think it's important that we have fighters like Neil Magny never getting to a title, Jim Miller never getting to a title, Ponzinibbio never getting to a title, Vicente Luque probably never getting to a title, because as we said, I'm breaching the point here slightly with Luque, but I think it's important in every division to have fighters that are placeholders for other fighters. Now, it's important that we rotate those fighters out, right? If Neil Magny loses 5 straight, I don't want to see him ranked. If Jim Miller loses 3 straight, I don't want to see him ranked. Please retire. Whatever. I think it's important, especially for somebody like Spivak. Now, I completely take Shawnee's point that heavyweight, for the most part, is so, not upon, top heavy in its skill, right? If it's not Sihil Ganye and it's not Francis Ngannou, or it's not Stipe Miocic, or not Tom Aspinall, the level then sort of drops off very, very quickly, right? Volkov is a perfect example. Volkov's never getting to a title because he will never get over that number 1 contendership. But do you want to watch him fight? Me personally, depends who he's against, right? But he's a good fighter. I enjoy his fights. Same with Taito Avasa. Is he going to get to the title shot? Probably not, right? I feel like it's important that we...
Everyone has a spurt as well, and Taito Avasa is in the middle of his spurt in it. And I just think that we may see that from Sergey Spivak.
No, there's a difference between heavyweight and the other divisions, right? And I'll tell you exactly what it is. If you get the number 7 or 8 ranked in the heavyweight division, you're probably there for 5 years. Whereas if you get the number 7 or 8 at welterweight or lightweight, you lose 2 or 3 fights and you're gonzo. Look at Gunnar Nelson. He was there, he was ranked. Where's he gone now? Spencer talked about Drew Dober. He lost 1 fight and he was out for a while. Gonzo. That happened. That won't happen in heavyweight. Who was the fight that Chris Rosenstruck against whoever he fought? One was ranked number 7, one was ranked number 8. They move around depending on who wins and loses. We look in 18 months' time, one will be ranked number 9, one will be ranked number 7. That is a fact of that division. And that is not the case, I think, in other divisions. Now, some lads at the top obviously will be, and if you keep winning, you will be. But I think that's the difference between heavyweight. And my overarching main point here as well is, I have great respect for lads like Jim Miller and other lads like that. But you see them on a card, right? And you're excited to see a Jim Miller there. And for exactly Spencer's point, sometimes maybe if Jim Miller's fighting, let's say Jim Miller fought Terence McKinney in his next fight, right? That's a massive yardstick fight. If Terence McKinney wins that fight and gets over Jim Miller, well, we have someone on our hands. That's not the case if someone beats Sergey Spivak. That is my whole point. I'm not shitting on like every fucking contender and saying people don't have it. I feel like in those other divisions where the contenders are replaced are the really good guys who've been there for years, like an Asunsa or like a Miller, are there, and you beat them. There is value to that. There's way less value to beating someone like Spivak, even if he might be good. But anyway, come on, we need to get back to the preview, lads. We could spend fucking 4 hours.
But, yeah, you know, currently right now there's no value in it, but like whatever, we shall digress. And just for the shits and giggles, Alexander Volkov is still ranked at number 8. And Jairzinho Rosenstruck is still ranked at number 9 in the heavyweight ranking.
Fuck the preview. Let's do a speaker's corner right now.
Let's do it.
We're already in it.
We're got an hour. And that went off on a side tangent that I wasn't expecting, but it was all good. Let's talk briefly about the opening fight on the main card, and a quick run through the prelims before we take off here. You know, you're not excited by Spivak, Sean. Are you excited at all by the prospect of the fight between Ariane Lipski and Priscilla Cachoeira in the women's flyweight division?
I am from Lipski's side. Like, Lipski is someone who, you know,
cost us all a lot of money.
Cost us all a lot of money to fuck her. But we've watched her in KSW, and anyone who did saw the quality that she has there. Now, maybe we overestimated her quality. Maybe she hasn't reached that stage again. But I always think there is a great, not maybe not a great fighter, but a good fighter in there, and someone at 125. Like, this 125 is a very interesting division, right? Because I think everyone will probably predict that Valentina Shevchenko will be gone from that division within the next year-ish. So if someone can go in like a 3-fight win streak, they can climb that division, maybe not win the title, but maybe fight for title. Maybe you could get in there against Firo or someone like that. And it doesn't actually matter who you are. It could be Lipski, it could be Molly McCann, it could be any number of people. Obviously, Tyler Santos and Firo and a couple of others are the main contenders for that, but someone could emerge from that. Now, will Lipski do it? I don't know. Same as we just talked about with those other people on the way up. But I think she has the ability to possibly do it. Cachoeira, I don't think so much. Not necessarily. Look, I'd be interested to see how this fight looks. And I don't know, maybe if Harry or Spencer have a breakdown of it. I feel like it's going to be a striking matchup. Maybe Lipski will throw in a few takedowns, which is funny because, you know, both of them have gotten beaten on the ground, I suppose, recently. But maybe Lipski will have the advantage in this one. But the problem with Lipski, when she does that and she gets kind of turned over at times, it doesn't go well for her and she kind of panics. And so maybe it's better off to keep it on the feet. Lipski is a favorite here. I think she's like minus 175, so not a massive favorite. And I think she should probably be a bigger favorite, if I'm being honest. Lipski is the sort of person as well. I think she needs confidence in herself. You know, she needs to put on 2, 3, 4 wins. She'd be better in the second win than she was in the first. She'd be better in the third win than she was in the second. And I'm kind of hoping, because she is one of those names and she is a good fighter, that if she is able to rise, it'll be fun. So I am looking forward to this fight. If Cachoeira wins it, it's probably going to be a bit of a downer, obviously, from the European side and everything. I always think Lipski is Polish because she fought in KSW, but she's not. She's from Brazil, but she's an honorary European. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that fight.
Exactly. How do you see the Battle of Brazil going down, Harry?
Lipski has to be the bully, because if she's not, she'll lose. I mean, that is in a line. That's how the fight goes. If she can't bully Cachoeira, if she can't take her down when she wants to from the trips and the clinch exchanges, it's going to be long. If she does get reversed on the ground, her get-ups aren't great. She looks to use jiu-jitsu when she shouldn't. She has some nice knee bar wins. We've seen that, but they're from top positions. Leg locks in MMA, as you know, bear in mind as a grappler, I'm a leg locker, but leg locks in MMA are not something that are advised ever, If Cachoeira comes in and beats Lipski here, I think we really, really have to take a look at how we're valuing Ariane Lipski. And Shawnee basically said it there, right? Lipski needs to come in here, string a few wins together, and go and handle Cachoeira. If she doesn't, all this stuff from KSW, it's already dwindling, but it's really, really dwindling, And I think, if Cachoeira can get on top, either from being taken down and reversing during the transition, or if she can force Lipski into takedowns and whatever, it's going to be a long night. But as Shawnee said, as with always, when there's a bit of grappling nous between two fighters, it's probably going to be a kickboxing fight.
Yeah, absolutely. As I see you smiling and nodding, I'm sure you probably agree with most of what has been said so far, Spencer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Lipski, as Shawnee and Harry both said, it's that KSW hangover, right? She was so good against fighters that either were in the UFC or graduated to the UFC. So you feel like there should be something better. and it just hasn't been there. And you wonder, is it, stage fright a little bit of getting to the next level and hype and expectation? She's changed gym. She's at ATT now. Like, what is it that's going to unlock it? Because going into a few of those fights, I know I've picked her. I know you guys have picked her and lost some money on her. And you just want to see that more. And is it that we're all just kind of fooling ourselves that there is more there? If there is something, it again, and I think I've said this for a few fights this weekend, this preview show. If there is something there, it has to be on display on Saturday, because this is a fight that you have to win to move forward.
Absolutely. It'll be interesting to see. That kicks us off for the first card of the on the main card. I just want to pick out maybe one or two fights from the prelims here. I'm going to start with Terrence McKinney. We're talking about being excited by fighters. I'm excited to see him fight. I thought he went in there and laid it all on the line against Drew Dober in his last fight. Fought Drew Dober the way a lot of people wouldn't fight Drew Dober, and that was like gritting his teeth, throwing bombs, and he ended up on the wrong way. These things happen. He comes back in here against Eric Gonzalez, who got knocked out by Jim Miller in his last fight. And you just really have to think coming into this one, Harry, that, Eric Gonzalez is there for the taking for somebody like Terrence McKinney if he plays a patient game and if he manages to get his shots off.
You've just stolen my entire fucking preview because you've used the word patience. That's the question. We know what Terrence McKinney has in his hands. We know all the plaudits from Chiesa. We've heard everything, right? And we've seen a bit of it in the cage as well. He had Drew Dober on as wobbly legs as a newborn deer, right? He was all over the gaff. But Terrence McKinney, through rushing, allowed Drew Dober to find a way back in. One thing that we all appreciate vastly about fighters is when and something we all talk about, is when a fighter has another hurt, the person that stalks the hurt fighter and picks their shots intelligently and puts their fighter out clinically and cleanly, those are the fighters that we always talk about. We also talk about Francisco Ronaldo for being a fucking idiot, but like, more often than not, the fighters that go in and pick their shots calmly and are present in the moment and they aren't fighting on autopilot and throwing the kitchen sink at lads are the ones that we give plaudits to. I feel like Terrence McKinney is being given this matchup as look, we did the Drew Dober thing. It didn't work out super well. Let's rebuild. We'll do the Gonzalez fight. You'll get him out of there in a round. And then we'll go back up and we'll try again. Terrence McKinney is still young in his career. He still has lots to learn. There's still lots of improvement there. We've not seen a lot of the grappling yet. We've seen some scrambling and whatever. But I feel like this is a bit of a give me fight. We were talking off air about, and Shawnee's mentioned this already, about some of the matchmaking being almost pro wrestling type, right? Well, we've gone from a Drew Dober who's, one of the most beautiful men to look at in the UFC, and he's gone out and Drew Dober's done the babyface thing and he's beaten the heel, and now they've got to build.
He's so dreamy.
Huh?
He's so dreamy, Drew Dober.
He is dreamy Dober. Drew Dreamy Dober.
There we go.
You can thank us for that, Drew, son. They give him then the lad that he can go out at a local crowd and he can smash this guy up and the crowd goes fucking wild and we're setting up the next leg.
It's like, I can't remember if it was referenced here last week or another week. It's kind of like that thing the Men in Black guys get out there and just flash it in front of everybody and you forget about what happened in the last fight, because my expectation is Terrence McKinney to come in here and blow Gonzalez out of the water as well. Kind of get the hype train back going again. And he was your fighter to watch this week. Spencer, why are you so high on Terrence McKinney?
I mean, you said you want to blank out that last fight, and it's actually the reason I don't want to. Like, I really don't want to, because he had Drew Dober.
I guess so, more so.
He had Drew Dober fucked. And if he had any understanding of patience and poise and how to just back off that, right? I think I put it in the piece, the Trevor Whitman thing to Justin Gaethje that we reference so often because it's such an important lesson for fighters to learn. You want to get him out of here, take 10 or 20% off and you'll get him out of here. And it sounds antithetical but I'm hitting him with all my power and he's not leaving. What do you mean I just dial it back a little and he'll get out of here? well, you're letting him walk onto it a little bit. You're finding the right shot. You're not blowing yourself out. If there was any patience in Terrence McKinney in that fight, he goes out and beats Drew Dober on like 4 weeks' notice after getting his second win in the UFC. And we're talking about a whole different course for him. I said in the piece this week that I actually want to see him go out here. And as much as I know he can go out and probably beat Eric Gonzalez in, I don't know, 90 seconds if he wants to, if he lands the right shot, God, I'd love to see him get 10 minutes in. And then sort of as Harry says with Umar Nurmagomedov, get the 10 minutes in, do the things. And then in the third round, you get to fuck around and get him out of here. That's what I'd like to see from Terrence McKinney. Go out, learn a little, gain some of that experience, do some of the things, test some of the things that you've been working on in the gym so that you can show us that there's some growth. What's probably going to happen is he's going to get him out of there in about 3 minutes max. And we're just, it's going to be great. It's going to contribute to the highlight reel. It's going to contribute to the hype, but it's not going to teach us anything or teach him anything about what he needs to do to be successful long-term.
Yeah, if he goes in and gets an early win off Gonzalez, you know he's going to be looking to fight on a card as soon as possible as well. And then we fall into that trap of fighting maybe too close, and you could fall into a Drew Dober situation again. Is that something that Terrence McKinney kind of has to try and avoid now at this stage in his career, Sean, or would you like to see him rack up as many fights as possible?
Not as many as he was before, but I still think a guy like McKinney is better off fighting a lot. I think it's very interesting, the two things that Spencer said there. I totally agree with the second part in that 10 minutes would be great for him. 15 minutes, I think it would be even great for him. You know, we spoke about Ian Gary a few weeks ago and said, you know, the 2 15 minutes are great. But I don't necessarily agree with like taking the 80% off if you have a guy hurt, if you're a guy like McKinney. Because if you are like a fast starter knockout artist and that presents itself for you, go and take it. Like if you're fighting Drew Dober, you have him hurt and you don't go for it and you wait, he will recover and probably beat you in a decision, you know, even if it is on short notice. Now that mightn't be the case here for Gonzalez, but you know, it's horses for courses and you have to fight the right way at the right time. And you know, that's the problem of going in there fighting someone like a Dober or say even like a Thiago Santos this weekend. We really could see the situation where he gets beaten, just kind of stays in there and then lands a big shot. Let's say if Jamahal Hill gets tired, we haven't really seen him over, you know, 5 rounds. That can happen to different fighters. Not saying it will, but it's something like that could. Now, the part of that with McKinney is, you know, it's a double-edged sword. If you go in there and keep finishing lads in 10 seconds, if you keep going at 100% and keep finishing, you won't get that experience. But it's funny, I spoke to Vincent Henderson there yesterday, and the interview will be out in a couple of weeks. But I asked him about remaining calm, or not calm, I would say, but remaining with his game plan, not only in fights, but in between fights. Like if you look at a Vincent Henderson fight from 5 years ago and look at one from then, maybe he's not the same fighter, but he fights the same way. And that's actually rare to see in fighters. And like you look at someone like McKinney, he comes in there, he fought a certain way, it won, then he loses. Is he going to throw everything in the bin and fight differently? Look at like Francis Ngannou after he lost Stipe, comes out and he doesn't throw a fucking punch against Derek Lewis for 15 minutes. Like, is that the sort of thing that can happen? If you did that to Terrence McKinney, where he's not coming out and not going mad in the first 2 minutes, well, you're probably losing what makes him great in a lot of different ways. Now, can he be great in a different way? Maybe, but I don't know. And I think that's why Spencer is asking those questions. I think he's very wise to ask that. And as he said, that loss to Drew Dober asked a lot of questions. Like Amanda Nunes last week, the loss to Pena asked so many questions coming in. And I think the same as here is the case for McKinney. I think Spencer said 10 minutes and go mad in the third. I think it could be 5 minutes, go mad in the second, maybe. I think that might be the sweet spot in the middle for McKinney here. Yeah. Plus, one of my bets is to win in the second round this week. So
nice.
There you go.
Get on it. I think that we're all in agreement there. I think patience is the key for McKinney, and was somewhat a winner, even though he lost his last fight, because no one has done that to Drew Dober. And I'm excited to see him fight as always. Spencer, I'm going to go to you to just give us a quick roundup on a couple of the rest of the fighters on the card. I know you've picked Brian Battle, Josh Quinlan, and Corey McKenna, I believe, as your fighters on the rise for this card.
Yeah, I have. I mean, sort of just shouting out a few people that are, you know, Brian Battle, obviously, with Ultimate Fighter ties, moving down a division to fight Takeshi Sato. He's 2-0 in the UFC. did well at middleweight, but kind of always felt like a guy that had the potential to go down. He's just a raw kid still, right? But he's shown a little bit of upside. Let's see what he can do at welterweight. Josh Quinlan had a very good win on Contender Series last year. Then he popped. And so this is a big question of like, let's see. Now you got to prove it. Now you got to come out and prove the skill. Jason Witt is a perfect guy to do that against, an experienced veteran that if you're not good enough to be in the UFC, he's going to show us that. We're going to learn that on Saturday. And then with Corey McKenna and Steph Edgar, just two fighters that, you know, are sort of on the way up, that have some upside, that have some potential. Let's see what they can do going forward. Stephanie Egger not getting more attention is sort of interesting to me. She's coming off some good wins. She had the armbar finish of Jessica Rose Clark last time out with the head and arm throw that we always see in women's MMA. She is a judoka. I know she competed at a high level internationally with that. The first loss in the UFC is short notice. I think it was 10 days after her previous fight against Tracy Cortez, who has been okay. Myra Buena Silva is another reasonable bantamweight. Let's just see which one of these two goes forward. And then the other person on this card, the last one that I'll shout out is because I get to give a shout out to our guy, Sean Denny, who helped me out with pronunciations today. Michał Olejniczak, moving down to middleweight, facing the ever-present Sam Alvey and his 8-fight winless streak. Just a guy that, right, we've seen some good moments from him at light heavyweight. We've seen some good performances. Let's see what he can do down a division against guys that aren't going to super outsize him, where he still has that movement, where he still has that boxing, where he still has the ability to go to the body that we've liked so much from him. Definitely somebody to watch to me.
How do you make middleweight shitter? Can I just say, in Stephanie Egger, first fight of her career. See who was against in the very first fight of her career.
Can I guess it was against Leah McCourt?
Oh, very close. Very close.
Oh,
it's against
dude,
my close personal friend, former Bellator Dublin headliner.
One from the vaults that we'll never see is that
never,
interview.
Never see that. Never see that interview.
Yeah, that wraps us up. Fight of the night, Harry. What do you think?
Fight of the night. I'll go Luque Neal.
Yeah, fair call. I'm going to go with fucking Sakai and Spivak. My boy Spivak there with performance of the night, fight of the night. In your face, Sean Sheehan. That rounds us off for another preview show.
It's Rocky Moore fight at night. No, what's going on?
Fuck yeah, we're going to bed.
I have to let these men go to bed. It's late. Back home. Thanks for joining me. Follow Spencer on Twitter, Sean and Harry. Follow me. Thanks for tuning in. Go over to our sponsors, All Real Nutrition Bars. Enter the code word Severe MMA at eatallreal.com. Get yourself 15% off those delicious protein bars. We'll be back again next week for another preview show.